Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the City of Farmers Branch Study Session meeting. It is Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. The time is 3 p.m. A few announcements. First, we have Councilmember Williams joining us via Zoom. Out of an abundance of caution, Councilmember Merritt is on a family vacation. Just want to make it known that he will join us at 5 o'clock for an executive session. And with that announcement, I will say, regardless of what we're doing at this time, 5 minutes before 5 o'clock, we will take a break to take executive session upstairs because we're going to have the team here and getting people in from out of town on that Zoom. Just trying to make it all work. We'll do that and then come back and address anything else that we need at that time. Hopefully we're not in a rush, but we will see. With that, we will begin with A1, discuss regular agenda items. Councilmember Roman, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few items. So I do have a question about item H3. Hello. So I'd just like to understand what the timeline of the project would be. Should it be approved? When will it begin and when will it end approximately?
Well, basically, we begin within 60 days of y'all's approval.
Okay.
And then that one has 240 calendar days on it.
And will there be any sort of inconvenience that residents should expect to experience during the term of this construction? Anything that?
Well, we will be working within the streets, so there will be probably a lane blocked off at times, but nothing that they're not typical during any kind of construction phase.
Okay. And well, I know that there's some houses that are going to be across the street from the library. Are any of those going to experience any kind of inconvenience during the time? Okay.
No.
I don't have any other questions about that one. Thank you.
Okay.
And then regarding H4, the $50,000 that we would be discussing today, that's already a portion of the amount that was previously approved. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, that's the only question I had there. Then for H5, on the picture, I noticed that there's like a dugout area or something. Is that what that is? For the new look, I was trying to understand what those were going to be, or if they're bleachers or something.
No, sir. Kerry Phillips, Park Superintendent. It's what it is. Councilman O'More, that's just a rendering that we found to put on there, just kind of give you, instead of paying an architect to come up, several $1,000s to come up with a pic, we just found that pic to put on there. Those sections right there would not be there. It would just be fenced off around it and then open field.
Got it. Okay. Initially, when I was looking at this agenda item and reading through it, I thought to myself, well, that's quite an abundance of soccer fields that we're going to have. But as I read a little bit further, I saw that one of the main differences with this specific soccer field and some of the other ones that are to the north, is that some are being rented for like tournaments, and this one's going to be exclusively for the use of residents, and it's not going to be rented. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, free play.
Are there any other differences between that large soccer field and the small one that we should be aware of?
As far as size, would really be the only thing. This is the kids that go to the elementary school there. During school, every morning they're there. Mm-hmm. I've stopped and spoke with them many, many times, and they enjoy it. They love it. So it's really good. I think it's going to be a huge enhancement for them to be able to play there.
One other thing to note too about this is a synthetic turf field, so we won't need to rest. And there's our other soccer fields. There are times that we have to limit activity to make sure that the fields are in playable shape.
Yeah. And then I also noticed that there are some residences that I've seen in the pictures that you put in the presentation And I see that there is a fence there. I don't know how high the fence is, but I just wanted to make sure that we're being mindful that hockey, I don't know how high the puck can go, but usually it's closer to the ground. But with soccer, it can fly anywhere. I remember when I was younger, I'd kick the ball all kinds
Yes,
of
sir.
places.
The
But I
fence-
just want to make sure that we're protecting.
Yes, we're taking all, the steps that we need to do. It's going to be an 8-foot fence around it. And where the goal is, we will extend it. Based on phone calls, talked to different people having an indoor area, and roughly 10 foot's really a good height to have. So we're going to have that directly behind where the goal is, 25 to 30 feet across the back.
Okay.
And the goals are small. I believe they're 8 foot is what they are. So
Okay.
it's basically for practice.
Sure. Thank you. And then that's all the questions I had for that one. Thank you so much. I do have some questions on H6. When I was looking at the diagram that was showing where let me pull that up, where the stop signs would go, I remember we talked about there being a no parking sign in front of one of the homes. So on the corner of Bramshaw and Mercer Parkway, there's an empty lot there, and we were going to put the no parking signs there as well. So I didn't see that in the little yellow or red line, so I just kind of wanted to ask about that.
Okay, the reason for the verbiage on the no parking signs is, so it's been the city's practice not to put signs in anybody's property that abuts the public roadway without their consent. So Public Works is the one who delineated where the signs were going to go. So that's the answer for that. Empty lot.
I see. So once if we are able to successfully obtain permission, then will we be able to equally enforce those specific areas as we would the other areas that we currently have domain over?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fantastic.
Oh. Mark. Right, that's a good point. So what he said, that if you did get the consent from the property owners, then the ordinance would have to be amended to then say, also these spots cannot be parked at.
So if we get permission, we would have to come back and amend the ordinance?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
got it. And with that, I don't have any other further questions. Thank you.
Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I also have a question on H3, please. Thanks, Mr. Bentley. I remember I was out in the park several times when I think Friesen Nichols had maybe a firm that they subcontracted to, looking at the bridges and everything there and taking their measurements. Could you tell us a little bit more about the deterioration particularly on the bridges? I understand pretty well about what's going on by the library, but on that part of the...
Well, we're getting, in the structures themselves, we're getting a number of cracks and openings in the bridge structure itself. We're getting some spalling underneath, inside the culvert, up underneath the ceiling of the culvert, getting some spalling there. We're having some areas that we're actually going to have to open up Josie Lane to actually see down in, to see what's going on there, because as you look up in there, we see large voids that we need to fill back in. So there's also on the upstream side of Josie Lane on the east side, there's a divider wall that the culverts are
Right.
offset. Well, that wall is actually broken. It's now allowing the water to spill over, and it's actually going up underneath the culvert.
Right.
So we're going to have to fix that, and then the gabions are going to have to be repaired.
Yeah,
So
I've
there's just a
noticed-
number of little things that are just going to have to be done.
Yeah,
to those
I've noticed for several years that it's deteriorating there.
It has,
And
yeah.
so that when there's not a steady flow of water, or don't have a big rainfall, the water's actually pooling there and getting really stagnant, and it's not, flowing as it should. Do you know, since the bridge that one particularly on Josie and on Webb Chapel were constructed, has there ever been any type of renovations done before?
Not before, not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
This is the first one. This was actually brought to my attention. It's unfortunate that these things sometimes take a long time to get the engineering done and everything else, but we started looking at this 3 years ago. So we're finally getting to the point where we're ready to
Right.
fix it. So.
Yeah, and I know the study with Freeze and Nichols went back to
Right.
2020, so,
Right.
yeah, I understand things
Yeah,
move
it just
slowly.
takes time to get the study done, then you got to get the design done and get it engineered and bid, so.
Right. But I mean, if this is approved tonight, I mean, we'd be looking at having this done by early next year.
Oh, yes, sir, yeah, like I told Councilman Roman that the 60 days, within 60 days, we'll be starting, and it's a 240 calendar day project.
Okay. Well, I know there can always be delays for different reasons.
Oh, yeah, definitely will, especially on a creek.
Right, right. And the firm Stoic Civil Construction, have we used them before?
Extensively, I mean, they have done, out of our Farmers Branch Creek projects, they have done 3 of them and done an excellent job.
Yeah.
They're a great contractor to work with.
Yeah, okay. I just think that's important for everyone to know. Yeah. And, yeah, that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Hold-
Mr. Basin.
Mark, before you go, I'm going to just, Councilmember Jackson or Councilmember Williams, any of y'all have any questions on each 3? Okay, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mark. Was this expense already budgeted? What account is it coming from? How are we paying for these?
It's coming out of the stormwater fee.
Okay. All
And
right.
yeah, it was budgeted. We did a study 2 years ago, as referred to, on the entire Rawhide Creek from Webb Chapel to Valley View. And we have about $3 million worth of work that needs to be done in there. And this is the first step.
Okay, very good. In looking at the proposal, the bid tabulation sheets, there was one item in here that kind of caught my eye, and I just wanted to understand a little bit more about the process. I want to say that I recall, it might have been Shane that was telling me how you guys sit down with the contractors making the bids and you go through each line item, perhaps and discuss the costs and the project and the requirements and all of that. There's one line item in here. It's tree removal and disposal off-site, and it appears to be one tree. And I didn't get a chance to at Library Cove reconstruction, and the estimate of the bid on removing that one tree is $1,250. And it just kind of struck me that seems like a retail cost of removing a tree. I figure if I'm removing a tree in my backyard that's near a pool and a house, and there might be some extra precautions, it probably would cost that much, or maybe I'm just out of touch with what it costs to remove trees, but I'm thinking in the grand scheme of things, I know it's a small amount. Are we negotiating each of these line items? Are we discussing this with the bidders?
No, sir, we're not allowed to do that by law. This is a competitive bid. We do not discuss anything with any contractor unless prior to the bid, if he has questions regarding a bid item or something, we explain what it includes if he does not sure, but we cannot negotiate any pricing whatsoever because it is a competitive bid. So what the numbers are what the numbers are, and we can't change anything, we can't modify it in any way.
So
That's why you have a bid for $1.4 million versus one for $900,000.
Understood.
Yeah.
So as a new council member, trying to understand just, it kind of seems like we're stuck with the numbers that any contractor might bid on these jobs between one contractor and another. What if someone else were to come in with a much lower bid? We only had 2 contractors bid on this, or?
The first time we bid it, we had 0. This is the second time we bid this project.
Okay.
The first time was 0. We went through, and the first one didn't have the Library Cove in it, so we added that in because we had those plans then ready by the time that came along. So we added in, made it a bigger project, and we got 2 bidders. Yeah, you would probably need to have purchasing come in and give you a talk about the bidding process, but basically, it is a competitive bid. We have deadlines that those bids have to be submitted by. Ours on this particular one is 2 o'clock. If a bid comes in at 2:01, we can't accept it.
Right.
So what bids we get by 2 p.m. of that bid date are the bids we have to go with, and the low bidder is the one where we start. Now, we do have a prerogative to look at the low bidder, if he's qualified, or we can disqualify him in some way that we know he can't basically do that job, then we can disqualify him and go to the second one. But that's the only movement we can actually do, is we have to start with the low bidder, we have to accept his bid if he's a qualified bidder.
Okay, that's very
go from
helpful
there.
for me to
Yes.
understand.
And then whatever pricing he has, as you can see, those bid tabs are confusing. We generally don't put them in there to the extent where you can see everyone, because the question always comes up, why did the same item, why did he bid 50,000, he bid 2,500?
Saw a lot of
Well, the problem is they put their profit and overhead in different numbers and different items, so we really have no control over that.
Sure. Okay. All right, very good. That's all I have at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Councilmember Williams? Good, okay. All right, then we will move on to A2, receive a biannual update from the Senior Advisory Board. Chair Hull.
Make sure you've got is this it? Senior advisory. There we go.
I click down where I want to go.
Yeah, you can put it in presentation mode.
I don't know what that means.
There we go, and then you just click the tab.
Here. Good afternoon. My name is Deborah Hull, and I'm the chair of the Senior Advisory Board at the Branch Connection here in Farmers Branch. And I'm here to give you our biannual presentation. Just a little forethought. It's only been 4 months and 6 weeks. It's 4.5 months since I presented, but you will not be disappointed because we've been busy. I want to thank the board at the Branch Connection. I've got several members here today, and I've got one former board member here today who came to see the presentation. And I know I forgot last time, but I do want to thank Jackie Biles and the staff at the Branch Connection who works so closely with us to make everything just great up there. We do have 9 members this year. We are missing the picture of one, but we do have a new member who was appointed last month. So we are 9 strong. And I also wanted to take just a minute to, our board members give so much, give their time, volunteer, energy, but they also do so much outside of the Branch Connection within the Farmers Branch community. We have members first and foremost, 3 Charlie Bird Service Award members who are current members of our board right now. We have members who are also active in the Farmers Branch Women's Club. We have a member who is serving on the Veterans Day celebration team. Let me see, who else do we have? Several members who serve on the Cops on Patrol program and the task force for I can't think of it right now, but when we were doing the ordinance, when we were redoing the ordinances, Joyce served on that. So there are a lot of things that we do outside of the Branch Connection, try and tie in the community, make it active, make the connection between us all. Mission and vision statements, we work all the time to do this. Again, like I said, board members work within the community. We just had our primetime tournament last week with 14 members of the Parks and Rec teen program came over, and we played 42 and chair volleyball, cornhole, something I've never played before, but I learned that day, shuffleboard, bowling. So we're working to make us, everybody have a good time, and we do, and I think we do fulfill our mission and our vision statements. Membership. Wow. Again, I haven't learned statistics in the last 4.5 months since we met, but as you can see that our membership is 43,000, highest it's ever been year to date. We have an NPS score of 89, which in layman's terms, I always look at it as our approval rating. And we have, as of this date, 1,000 current active members in the branch connection. We're continually increasing membership, participation, and we're excited. We're so excited about every time these numbers go up. All right, some examples of our success. I think I mentioned last time that we hosted the 2022 North Dallas Chair Volleyball Tournament, our own March Madness. We had 16 teams, 150 participants. We won. Farmers Branch won. It was such a great day, such a great day. And we also had our Spring Bazaar. We had over 200 participants. And we also hosted an American Red Cross blood drive, which we will be hosting in Owen for the Call to Blood Center soon. Fishing fun, what a great day, over 1,700 participants. And excited to say that since we met last time, we've added 3 social programs, 3 fitness programs, and 3 evening programs, all new, that we have not offered before. And we'll continue to keep adding. Our future, our game night, Space Odyssey, September 17th. Buy your tickets, they go on sale soon. Another big craft fair, October the 15th. And again, continue to increase our program and awareness of what's going on in our community with our active adult population, listening to them, responding to them. Jackie and his team very good at responding to suggestions, criticisms. I mean, come on, Jackie personally will, if we got maybe a little negative rating, we'll reach out to the person and try and get that resolved, to get the issue resolved so everybody's happy at the end of the day. And of course, our renovation. We're going to have that, right? Yeah. We're so excited about that, and hopefully that will get going soon. But I know it's going to happen. Any questions?
Mrs. Hull, thank you for your leadership. Thank you to the board members for their leadership and for being here today, and also Jackie and your staff for all that you do for our active adult community. I love that you guys have a wonderful place to go and congregate and build community. It's great to see, and what you bring to our community, not just at the branch connection, but across the entire city, is tremendous. You get so many people involved, and it's just wonderful experience, and we're grateful for y'all and what y'all do. I don't have any questions personally, like you, just waiting for that renovation.
I know, right?
But does anyone have any comments or questions at this time? Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, I don't really have any questions. Thanks very much, Deborah, for the presentation. And, you're just continuing what you've been doing, setting a high bar of excellence and kind of setting the gold standard. And I'd like to congratulate you and all of the members of the Senior Advisory Board and Jackie. Y'all do a great job. And I'd just like to say also, during the last couple of years when we were dealing with COVID and everything, most cities, they didn't even have any programs going, for their seniors and adults. And you guys had a lot of activities, and we had to structure them outside with concerts outside and the various meals and things like that. But y'all have done a great job, and you're continuing to set the bar really, really high. So just congratulations.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you so much. We're going to try. We're going to do it. We're not going to try. We're going to do it.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much, Deborah. I really enjoy seeing this update. There's one question I do have. If you go back to the membership slide.
Oh, you're asking me to go back?
Go back a few slides. Well, just for folks, slide 4 of 8.
Oh, I figured it out.
There we go. So the difference between the participation and the membership, the 43,410, is that how many people scan in, right? That's
Yes, sir.
That's a big number, right? I mean, that's a lot. So, I've noticed in attending some of the Monday morning breakfasts, the first Mondays, that group is growing as well. It was quite the full house this Monday compared to what I've seen in the past. So you're obviously doing something right. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
One quick thing when you said that, we did reinitiate our Friday Franks, and we had over 100 participants. come. And we also had our ice cream and Elvis social a couple weeks ago. We had over 80 people attend that. So, yeah, I love to see the social. I love to see people getting together.
Make a comment.
Go ahead.
Just want to shout out to Jackie. So, I mean, I remember when Ed Tolliver retired after almost 30 years of service, we're like, how in the world are we ever going to replace Ed? And then we hired Jackie, and it's right in the middle of a pandemic, and we don't get a chance to have Jackie articulate with the board and the group, and we're like, are we ever going to be able to restore our numbers? And to see these graphs now tells us what a great find we have in Jackie. So thank you. I'm continuing to be impressed with Jackie, so thank you for all you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Go Navy.
Okay, we're going to move A3 down closer to A6 and jump to A4, which is discuss appointment of members to the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for the Citywide Comprehensive Plan. Mrs. Sen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Shurba Sen, Deputy Planning Director. Tonight we are requesting your feedback and input and your blessing on appointment of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And the purpose of this study session item is to facilitate that discussion, and then you have the actual resolution as part of consent agenda item where you'll be considering the resolution for action. This is a direct follow-up from the feedback we received from City Council at the joint meeting on January 22nd and also the strategic retreat that happened in the month of January to encourage effective public engagement for this citywide study. Staff and the consultant worked together to come up with a public engagement plan that was presented to City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission at the last joint meeting of July 11th. And some of the structure of this public engagement included a Stakeholder Advisory Committee. The committee, by its name, is going to be comprising of representatives from different community sectors, and they are going to guide the overall study process, working with staff and the consultants, reviewing the plan elements at different stages of development, kind of giving their feedback and also spreading the word among the community at large. That's the goal of this body. As you can see, the structure was discussed and derived as 2 members from the City Council, 2 members from the Planning and Zoning Commission, and 6 members from other relevant boards from the city, and 5 resident appointees by City Council. So this was the chart that was included in your packet, also as part of the resolution. That's all I have for the discussion item for you tonight. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I guess I can see, hopefully everyone is, you all got to choose 5 people, or I guess each one to represent your district and kind of your voice. The last thing we need to do is fill the positions from City Council. From my standpoint, my recommendation and nomination would be first David Merritt. The amount of time that he spent as the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission and his involvement in the city across various boards, I think is tremendous. His knowledge of this community and involvement from that level is something that I think we would need from the City Council standpoint. And due to similar kind of experience, I would also look to Councilmember Driscoll. His involvement on the 2017 bond committee, the quality of life bond that was the first one that was passed in quite some time, going through that experience, knowing how that works, his time on planning and zoning, his involvement with new urbanism, and those I would say would also make a great candidate to serve on this committee. And so that's kind of my recommendation, but I do want to hear from everybody so that we can talk through the different merits of who they believe should be on this from the City Council. And so with that, I will start with Councilmember Roman and then work my way around.
Thank you, Mayor. There's 2 individuals that when I was thinking about who might be the best people to represent City Council on this committee, I agree that I think David Merritt has a lot to offer, and I agree with that recommendation. The second person that I'd like to recommend is Councilmember Richard Jackson, just because he's been present, he's been here, he's been really involved in the community, and prior to his commitment to City Council, he was incredibly involved with the city and attending city council meetings, being involved in his community and rallying everybody together for the Love Shack, as people have referred to it now, as well as serving on one of the special committees with the I-35 corridor, or one of the I-35 betterment projects that were going on. So I think for those reasons, I think Councilmember Jackson has a lot to offer.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll.
I would concur with your two recommendations, and I think David would serve, and as you stated, he does have extensive knowledge. He's served on different boards and commissions, and I got to know him working back in 2016 on the quality of life bond study that we did for the whole year, and that all three of our proposals were unanimously approved or overwhelmingly approved by the residents. And then he served for many years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and I served also 4 years. And as I think you maybe know, but perhaps the public doesn't know, when I was on Planning and Zoning, I attended all of the American Planning Association meetings that were held in Texas, in Waco, in North Texas, other areas. And they were usually 2 and 3 day, extensive seminars with engineers, architects, urban planning specialists, professors, etc. And I also attended in March, I think it was, of this year, the Congress for New Urbanism and their convention in Oklahoma City. So that was nice that it wasn't too far away. And I also was instrumental in bringing Rick Cole here in January for our joint Planning and Zoning and City Council strategic meeting, which was half a day Saturday event. And I think we were all just amazed at the turnout we had and the interest in urban planning and the comprehensive plan, and a lot of his ideas and the experiences that he brought from his different roles in that capacity. And I think that was kind of instrumental in also us moving forward with the comprehensive plan, which I've had many discussions with my former colleagues, David Moore and others on planning and zoning, and of course David Merritt. And we're very glad that we're moving forward with that. And I think it's a very important study for the city as it touches on transportation, the environment, sustainability, both the east and west side, all the economic development, and all of those kinds of questions. And I'd be, more than happy to serve on that.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. I concur that David Merritt would make a good council member representation on the committee. I'm nominating myself as the second recommendation on the committee. Given the development that is planned on the east side in particular, but throughout the city on the west side, and thinking ahead of the I-35 corridor, and what do we do after TxDOT's done with the 635 corridor? I have some very deep interests in helping the city move forward, particularly in more restaurants, entertainment, and demonstrating that Farmers Branch has something here for everyone. So I would like to participate on this committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Councilmember Williams.
Good afternoon, you guys. Thanks for tolerating me on Zoom. I'm sorry I'm not there to be present. Mayor, I do agree with your two proposals, your two appointments with Councilmember Driscoll and Councilmember David Merritt. I think with both of their experiences with planning and zoning, I think that's important. And the fact that we are combining existing plans, we're not reinventing the wheel with this comprehensive plan. We are merging and filling in the gaps with our existing plans that we have for the west side, the I-35 corridor study, and with the east side and city center. I think it's important for us to have two members up there that have as much experience with those existing plans to help identify those gaps. So I would also be in agreement with your appointments.
Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, it seems up here we're kind of unanimous on David Merritt filling one of those spots, so we'll go ahead and maybe plug him in depending on how things go whenever we make it official. And then I guess now it's the second position. I guess currently there's 3 people that would be interested in Councilmember Driscoll, 2, and Jackson, but I'm gonna let everyone go around one more time and share one more round of comments before we kind of move on and move towards a decision. I guess we'll make it official at the next council meeting. Right, Pete?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All right. So Councilmember Roman.
You know, I still think Councilmember Richard Jackson
Oh, it's consent today. Perfect.
is the best person for this role. I think if you watch him interact with residents and if you watch how much he deeply cares about our community and about really making sure that citizens feel heard, I think he would be the best person for the role. Not only that, if you look at his track record, you will see that he has exemplary attendance records when he was prior to council and even afterwards, and he attends many of the community events outside of just the city council meetings, which I think to him shows his commitment to the community and the city. And I think for those reasons, I think Richard Jackson makes the best candidate.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm not going to repeat my resume or my qualifications and my experience. I would just like to say I'd be thrilled to bring my experience and knowledge on these issues, and particularly, as has been discussed, combining the east and west side and the older central district of the city in the new comprehensive plan. And I think, you know, I have the most experience and knowledge on the various facets of that plan and what we'll be doing in the next year or year plus. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson.
So, Mayor, I would just say for the benefit of those that are watching, it's important for everyone to know that this Stakeholder Advisory Committee is not making decisions in a vacuum. This Thursday will begin one of 3 visioning sessions where the entire community is invited to come and give input and ideas. We're not relying on this small group of people to make all the decisions for the city and what the city is going to look like in 20 years. It's a much larger effort than what you see on the slide before you. That being said, and in concert with Councilmember Roman's comments, I find it imperative that whoever is filling this second position be an advocate for residents, to ensure that the process does incorporate resident input and that it's not a committee that's making decisions in a vacuum. Not to say that any of these folks would do that, but it can happen just as a matter of natural process in a group of people that get together. So I'm saying that I would be the advocate for the residents and listen to the residents' voice and ensure that their input, thoughts, concerns, and ideas are included in the outcomes of this very large initiative.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Williams.
I think that the dedication to the city and the dedication to representing the residents is apparent in all of us as council members. That's why we ran, and that's why we were appointed to the chairs that we hold. So I don't think that it's a question of whether any council member is dedicated or has the residents' best interest or the city's best interest at heart. I think we all do. But I'll say again with Councilmember Driscoll, his particular attention to new urbanism and the work that he's done with our planning. I think that it just lends itself to a really natural fit for him to be one of these stakeholders. So I think that would make a great team with having David and Michael represent the council on the SAC for us.
Thank you very much. I think all of us would do a good job serving on here, but looking at the tallies and to move this forward, my first recommendation is H7. I think we need to vote on independently instead of fully with the consent and with the kind of unanimous decision of David Merritt. The way I still kind of look at it, it seems like there's a preference of 3-2 for Driscoll, and so I'm going to start with that motion as we move to H7, but we'll pull that out and we can discuss it and vote on it at that time independently outside of the consent agenda. So we'll start there and we'll address it again at the consent agenda. Next up is A5, receive an overview on the 2022-23 City Council budget process. Ms. Evans-Jones.
Hello. I'm being careful not to close things that shouldn't be closed. I'm moving gingerly up here. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. I'm happy to be with you. My name is Sherelle Evans-Jones. I'm Director of Finance with the city. And I hope to just kind of give you an overview of our budget process and the steps that we'll need to take in order to approve the budget and the related items. And hopefully this presentation will just give you an overview, and then we'll have an opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper as we talk further about our budget and our upcoming retreat. So what you have before you is just an overall timeline of our 22-23 budget process. You received an electronic copy, and I think the paper copies for any council member who wanted them were made available today. The electronic copy was provided to members of our council, as well as made available to the public, because that electronic copy was made available on our website on this past Friday. So we are here today talking about our budget timing. And as we go forward, next week, we'll spend a little bit of time in our budget retreat, which will be held here at City Hall, talking about just all of the nuances of our overall budget process and what's in the numbers. One helpful hint for just making sure that the content of the budget retreat meets your needs is if you have any of those specific questions, you can kind of tell sometimes if a question is hairy and it may take a little bit of research or pull in some numbers or, some consideration. It's helpful if we have those questions in advance. We know during the retreat there's going to be dialogue and questions back and forth, but anything that you think might require a little bit of research, it might be helpful to know what those are in advance just to improve that process. I'll point us to August 16th. That's our next scheduled council meeting. From here on out, y'all probably will be sick of me until the budget gets passed. The intent is for there to be an item on each study session agenda to talk about the budget. So after we come out of this budget retreat, there'll be changes, tweaks, updates, enhancements to the budget that was presented to you. And what I hope to have at this upcoming study session on August 16th is, the results of what those updates, tweaks, enhancements, changes are. This graph was just pretty. It doesn't necessarily, we have way more than, what is that, $12,000 in the proposed budget. So not drawn to scale, but just to give you an idea that we'll take a look at the proposed budget, whatever council directions we have, and we'll come up with like a revised budget, a revised 22-23 budget. Moving forward to the next scheduled council meeting date, some of the topics that I know we'll have an opportunity to go through during that study session is just, again, what 22-23 budget changes, updates, enhancements. Will constantly be retooling on the budget. But one thing that I heard from our process last year is that the year-end budget, the budget for the year that we're currently in, that is an item that will be voted upon during our final meeting to discuss the budget on September 20th. And we on the finance team and our departments are in the process of basically pulling all those numbers in together. One point of feedback that I heard during our past year's budget process is, well, wait a minute, that seems so fast for our council members to get that information in preparation for the meeting and the last meeting in September where you're voting on the budget, the tax rate, the amended budget, et cetera. So what we're going to try to do is bump that up by a meeting, and you will have an opportunity to see the year-end budget for the year 21-22 will be presented there, and that'll give you kind of an idea of how we stand with this year's budget. Also, as a council agenda topic, there'll be an opportunity for the public to comment on the budget as well during that time as well, so that will appear on the agenda. And lastly, with the kind of the finish line here, September 20th, we will need to approve that budget on that date, because the following date, we need to communicate the results of our tax rate, et cetera, to the county in order for them to be able to do and take next steps. So September 20th would be approving the proposed or revised budget, tax rate, and I refer to it in all of its accoutrements, so the next year's stuff. It'll also include approving that this year's budget, the tweaks and enhancements and changes. And then one other item that is always included at this time is just updating or approving the service plan, the service and assessment plan related to the Mercer Crossing PID. That will be included in your packet for you to have an opportunity to take a look at as well. Now, I've showed you this whole long line of details, steps, et cetera, and what I've plugged in there are the dates that are scheduled and the things that I know that we likely will be talking about. If there are dates or additional meetings that the council would like to have, we're not limited to these, but I guess what I'm saying is we have 7 weeks between today, as we're looking at each other face to face, and September 20th, and we're here to make of it what you would like and provide you with what information you need. And with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Ms. Evans-Jones, thank you very much. Very thorough. We understand what's in front of us. And I do want to echo your comments that if we're feeling that we need more time, that we need more discussion, I promise we will make that time in between here and in before September 20th. Even if we have to stay till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, we will figure it out and get it done by that time so you can make your announcement. But I do want, especially our newer council members, Councilmember Roman, Councilmember Jackson, that you feel you can get all your questions answered, get caught up to speed as best you can this quickly, and understand what we're putting not only in front of staff to execute, but for our residents as well for this upcoming year. So are there any questions or comments as it relates to the schedule that we have outlined in front of us right now? Councilmember Williams, any from you? Okay. I do want to state that in years past, yes, the retreat has been off-site. this year. As noted, it will be in City Hall. It will be right here in these chambers next week. So we'll have plenty of seating and opportunity for people to come and take part of that discussion and see all the wonderful ideas that council will be putting before us to maybe modify or enact the budget as proposed. So seeing no questions from anyone else. No. Okay.
So Mayor, this binder was in our chair or desk when we showed up tonight, but it's not posted online for the public to view. Will this be available to residents to view?
So that all of that information is available electronically. That information is on our website now, farmersbranchtx.gov/proposed budget.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? All right. Looking forward to getting started.
Me too.
We will now move back to A3, and we'll now dive into a whole bunch of different things as it relates to our CZO and Code of Ordinances. A3 is the presentation, discussion, and direction regarding possible amendments to the comprehensive zoning ordinance related to tree preservation for residential and non-residential zoning districts. Mrs. Sen.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again. So the tree preservation presentation today, I'm not going to get into too much detail about the ordinance or what work has been done before. This was more to gauge council's interest and kind of restart the discussion, if you will. So some of you would know that staff had started working on a proposed tree preservation ordinance during the years 2019 and 2020. However, due to, and that tree preservation ordinance work was going to be nestled within a larger zoning ordinance update that would be part of the landscaping section of our zoning ordinance. So it was a two-part ordinance amendment work that staff had initiated at that time, initially directed by Planning and Zoning Commission, then also presented it to City Council once at a study session conversation. However, that process was derailed due to the COVID-19 pandemic and then later staff changes. We wanted to see if City Council, with the new council members who are with us tonight, if you all would be interested in restarting that process, that discussion, that conversation that kind of got stopped after we made some progress. So what was the goal or why we started even talking about tree preservation ordinance? Initially, it was a very simple question raised by one of our, at that point, former P&Z commissioner regarding the demurrable programs that was very popular within the central area. And what was being seen is that in some cases, when the older houses were being torn down and replaced by newer homes, they weren't replacing the landscaping. And in some cases, either there was almost no landscaping, in some cases there were poor quality landscaping being installed. So that was a question that was raised. And also the mantra, if you will, that we always try to follow or review when we review any new project is our agenda or our city in a park logo. If we are not being true to that line or that mantra, then who else will? Right now, what our CZO directs is what you see on your slide. It's this very small paragraph or statement. It says all landscaping shall be maintained in a living, growing condition, and any landscaping that is removed must be replaced with the same or comparable species and caliber plant and when it was originally, or as it was when originally installed. So there are two big loopholes here. First of all, what we are trying to preserve is preserve existing mature canopies. It's one of those things, my dad is a dentist, and he would always tell you, teeth is one of those things you don't realize the value unless you lose them. It's the same way with trees. If you lose a mature big oak tree, when you replace them with a 3 caliper inch tree, or even if you replace them with, say, 5 3-inch caliper trees to match the caliper size, if they all survive, if they do, it takes about at least 15 years, if not more, for them to grow to that size and give you the benefit of having a mature canopy next to your right-of-way on your property, just beautifying the cityscape, the streetscape, your property overall is extremely important, without even getting into the other scientific benefits of having mature tree canopies within the city. So from that standpoint, what we have in our current code was not adequate. It does not provide any repercussion for someone to go down on their property and just cut down mature trees. Anyone can do that tomorrow. And what they have to do is replace with some tiny trees, matching the caliper size. So that was the main goal behind starting the discussion with tree preservation ordinance, that why, and also giving some incentive, like the carrot and stick approach, that if you do take down mature trees, what should be the repercussion of you taking down the trees? Compared to other cities within the DFW metro area, we are in the minority because if you see some of the cities listed on this slide, many of our neighbors do have similar forms of tree preservation policies, the way they try to preserve their existing canopies or their existing landscaping and enhance new landscaping. There are ways to look at this amendment. So there are tools that we can use, tree survey, preservation requirements, tree replacement options, landscape tree credit, and tree removal permits. So those are some of the ideas we started talking about. And I wanted to clarify this picture on the right side of your screen from Google Street View. You can see how this house, when it was being reconstructed or after the demolition and rebuilt, they beautifully preserved the tree, mature tree in their front yard. So things can be done if we can enforce our code or make our code in a way where it's enforceable. So tree survey, of course, we all know what a tree survey is. If we don't know what's on ground now, how are we going to protect or preserve those? They have to be prepared by a professional who can give us the type of species, the size of how they are on the property. That's like the first step if you want to take on a tree preservation ordinance and how to protect the existing canopy and enhance more. We looked at both residential and commercial properties when we started looking into this. We need to define which species need to be protected. Not all tree types have to be protected. There were some discussion with our commissioners at that time, and we have an arborist on our existing planning and zoning commission. She's very excited about this. She gave us some good ideas. Pam has retired now, but she was on our parks department at that time, and she is very enthusiastic about trees. We got some suggestions from her. List the type of species, which ones to be protected, which ones not, which ones are by size also. By state law, there are certain size limitations for residential tree preservation that we have to follow. Replacement tree, I want to make sure that the idea is clear. The goal is not to create a toolbox where how you replace tree. The goal is to make sure that we are not replacing tree unless they're absolutely required to be removed. There are ways to get there. You can define a construction site in terms of what is your buildable area, and you can only require the trees in your front yard to be preserved in case of residential, or if it's for commercial, also again, the ones that are visible from the public right-of-way, preserve those sites. So that way, if you have a heavily wooded lot, due to construction, of course, there has to be some trees removed, but not all of them. And then, of course, the carrot and stick approach, there has to be a payment of fee in lieu of replacement trees. So say there's a smaller site and they have to replace trees, but they cannot replace all of them on that site itself. The primary requirement would be you have to replace them on your site, or if you cannot, you can pay to a tree replacement fund. That was one of the ideas that was discussed with the commission at length. And as you can see on this slide, it says that the properties with existing one-family dwelling units or two-family dwelling units, there was a minimum caliper inch restriction based on the state law that we cannot require people to preserve trees that are less than 10 inches. It has to be 10 caliper inches or higher. So this map, as you can see, it's our existing, basically the plan boundaries, the west, central, and east, loosely defined. The concept that staff brought forward with Planning and Zoning Commission for discussion was if we are going to require tree replacement funds or tree replacement fee, they have to go into some sort of urban forestation fund, and then those funds can be reutilized to plant more trees within public right-of-way, to improve the look and feel of the neighborhoods, the streetscape of existing areas where there aren't mature tree canopies or they lack landscaping. So in terms of direction tonight, what I'm looking for from you guys is, would you be interested in us restarting that work? And the next step would be, if council gives us the direction, then we'll start working on a draft ordinance with the city attorney's office. Then we'll bring that draft ordinance to Planning and Zoning Commission first for their discussion and review, and also eventually to City Council for your feedback and input, make the necessary changes, and then go through the formal adoption process of public hearing and zoning amendment. So that's all I have for you tonight. I know there was a lot of things I tried to cram in, but there was a lot of work done on that ordinance, and it's kind of is sitting on the shelf at this point. If you have any question, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Mrs. Sen, thank you very much for catching us up on what this ordinance originally looked like, even though it was kind of shelved. And the reason I kind of brought this back is frustrated about what's kind of happened at Brookhaven Country Club. A lot of trees were removed, some by storm, which we wouldn't be able to do, but some were kind of removed on their whim to make some of their own changes. In my opinion, it got rid of some beautiful streets and canopy, and if we had this in place, at least there would have been some restitution that we could have made some adjustments, replanted trees, done some other things, or forced them to maybe put them back. I think maybe it also would have made TxDOT think twice about ripping down the beautiful trees in front of the Starbucks right here at Valley View and in 35. And when I think about corporations and a lot of other things, I think being a city in the park, I want people to be cognizant of that. I want people to be cognizant of us being a first ring city and being much older, that we have a wonderful canopy in this community, and we need to do what we can to protect that. And I think this ordinance goes a long way to preserve that. And P&Z brought this forward. This is an idea that originated from them, and I think it was a good one. And yeah, it kind of was put on hold, but seeing some of that stuff, I just think now is maybe the appropriate time to kind of bring this back, take another look. So that's why I asked today if you could make the presentation where it was, what it's kind of looking like, and if this is something y'all want to adopt. And with that, we'll leave that to y'all, but I'm going to change pace on which side of the room I start on. I'm going to start with you, Councilmember Jackson, to get your thoughts on this potential CZO change.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Sarupa. I think it makes sense for a city in the park to have, some type of guideline or provision around trees and dealing with just time, right? Because trees die, they get damaged. We have construction and other plans that require taking trees out. This appears to be largely focused on construction. And your comments were kind of in that direction as well, is that, we have companies and new home builds and such that come in and remove trees. But when there's damage to trees caused by storms, I'm assuming this ordinance would not apply?
So without getting into too much detail of the ordinance itself, because also we haven't refreshed the ordinance work ourselves, it was only going to be specific to when it's initiated by the property owner or the contractor without any natural cause. Also, that's why I brought up the concept of, if you have a heavily wooded lot and for any kind of construction, you have to touch the construction pad, which is like your buildable area. So there has to be those things that are protected, that you don't have to pay a fee if you have to remove a tree because there is no other room on your lot to build a building or a house. So yes, there will be considerations within the ordinance where some of those are going to be built in, that not all of them. So we will define which ones are protected. If you notice, I also talked about only the front of the lot to be defined as, okay, if it's a residential property and we're trying to preserve trees, we will only make them preserve the trees on the front of the house or the front yard. Will not require them to preserve the backyard, because our main goal is also to preserve the streetscape and how the properties look from the public right-of-way. So that made sense that, yes, so not all the trees are going to be part of that.
Okay.
Did I answer your question?
It did. The Urban Reforestation Fund, is that a national program that we would implement locally? Where did that come from?
So it's not a national program, it's just the name. So when we talked about the fee, because right now the problem we are facing is, and I'll give a very similar example that Mayor Dye just mentioned, there is a property that's on 35 frontage, it's a private commercial property, where there was no construction or improvement happening, it was a closed down building. And they approached staff towards the beginning of the year asking, we just want to take down our mature trees in the frontage. And the I-35 frontage actually have a big tree buffer requirement as per our landscaping. So we told them that no, you should not remove those trees because there is no conflict with utilities, there is no reason, these are healthy growing trees. And we did site visit with our team from Park and Recreation Department and as well as us and our deputy director with code. But 3-4 months go by, they still cut down the trees. And now we are stuck with the situation, what do we do? This is a tool where we can say, well, we give you instruction, our code says that you cannot take down certain trees unless there is a cause, and you still do, then either replace them, and if you cannot replace them with the required caliper inch, then you pay to this fund, and we will replace those trees in that same area with that fund along public right-of-way. Now, again, it's more to discourage them versus encourage them to take down the trees, because the fee would have to be proportionate
Right.
to what kind of trees they're taking down.
Right. To me, when I saw that, to me, it just looked like a workaround, for a company to say, okay, we're going to take down a tree. We're not going to replace it because we don't have a place or want to. And so we're just going to pay whatever the fee is and move on. And the whole idea here is to replace trees with trees, right? Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm interested in seeing this move forward a bit. I'm assuming that we're going to look at other cities' code as a model for what we might put together. I recall that there were a number of very mature trees that were taken down in front of the Home Depot in Dallas on the other side of 635 a number of years ago. Those were very nice trees. I played under them as a kid, and that was a Kodak property. And they took those trees out, and that was a really big deal for a lot of people, myself included. And so I see this as an ordinance that is probably good for us and that we should explore. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sarupa, for the refresher course. And as you said, this has kind of been on the shelf for a couple of years for different reasons. You outlined also, I think on one of the first pages, that several of our neighbor cities have tree ordinances. Without going into extensive detail and taking an hour, could you kind of just hit some highlights that some of the surrounding cities, what their existing tree ordinances are?
I actually do not have that information in front of me, but we can provide that to you. Actually, this ordinance, as I was saying, there was a lot of work done. So many of those cities we had looked at those ordinances, and that's how we came up with those names that these cities have in some form of fashion within their either landscape ordinance or as a standalone tree preservation section, requirements where they will basically tell applicants or future residents that, okay, if you are taking down trees under a certain caliper inch or above a certain caliper inch or within certain locations, for certain species, these are the repercussions. You have to replace them, either replace them in kind or pay a fee. So those were the two options we have seen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In general, I'm in favor of moving forward with this, and the benefits of tree canopies, particularly in urban environments, are long studied, and it's a kind of a core tenet of urban planning, and it has many, many benefits, including, physical health benefits for residents. It has a calming effect on traffic flows. They're all proven things that's out there if you want to do some research. It obviously lowers the urban temperatures, and we hear many times, not just now, but we're in a drought and we're having several days of over 100 degrees, but Dallas, for example, and many other urban areas have these heat domes over them. And studies have been done that a lot of folks worldwide have died. It's often people with respiratory problems and health problems, or people that don't have air conditioning or adequate air conditioning that have actually died. And I've read some of the studies that have been done that scientists have actually proven that a lot of that had to do with the fact that some of these neighborhoods did not have tree canopies. And often, this was not realized. And anyway, there are many, benefits to cities. Tree canopies and healthy, vibrant tree canopy communities also enhances property values. And I think it's time we could move forward with this. Thank you.
Thanks. Councilmember Roman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm interested in continuing the conversation. I think it sounds like a neat idea. As I thought about it more, just trying to identify what are some of the concerns that I may hear from residents, and I know that I hear a lot of concerns from residents of like, oh, well, we have to get permission to do this from the HOA, and I just don't want it to be thought of as the city trying to be like an HOA regulating what you can and can't have. So I just want to make sure we're careful about that, and I guess once we open it up for public comment, then we'll have an opportunity to hear if that's even a concern. I want to make sure that we can address certain situations, whereas we've talked about a storm takes down a tree. What happens if the tree dies? What happens if you have to remove the tree because the roots are creating some kind of plumbing or structural issue? What if it's an uncontrollable or necessary situation where you have to remove the tree? Is someone still going to be penalized, right? So those are just some of the things, but I think it's worth moving forward and having a further discussion to help address some of those items. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Williams.
Thank you so much, Troopa, for bringing this back up. I think this is a great idea. Like we can see, many cities already have a tree preservation policy, and as we continue to battle more extreme weather and extreme heat, any way that we can help our urban areas stay cooler and maintain those robust canopies, I think it's a fantastic idea. And as you explained, this is not to prevent somebody from being able to do what they want or what they need to be able to do on their property, but is rather an encouragement to maintain those more mature trees. So, I know that you explained that there would not be penalties if it was due to natural disasters or due to new construction, where you had a buildable area that was being restricted by a mature tree. So, I trust you guys to present us with our best options, and I look forward to seeing it at a future meeting.
Cool. All right. I think you have your answer. Yes. All right. Thank you. Then we will move on to A6, discuss various code topics related to solid waste, cart storage, garage sales, rain barrels, shopping carts, and other various code topics and possible revisions as requested by City Council and staff. Mr. Bonanno.
Good afternoon. How are you? Leo Bonanno, Deputy Director of Neighborhood Services. Today we have an eclectic discussion of all sorts of things folks have wanted to chat about. For the past 8 or 12 weeks, topics have been thrown out as topics of interest, and so we've combined them into this one presentation, hoping to educate everyone who's interested and perhaps make some changes if that's decided. I do have one question before I get started. We're going to talk about 4 or 5 topics that are essentially completely unrelated. Do you want me to stop at the end of each topic so you can, would that be better? Okay.
That was what I was going to recommend.
Okay.
So thank you.
Because they'll all start running together. Okay.
Exactly.
Sure. No problem. Well, just a bit of history. Most of what we're talking about comes out of Chapter 56, which is the Property Maintenance Code. It's a year old now. And I did plan on bringing it forward to all of you for some minor corrections and updates. It's working well based on what we came up with the help of the Code Enforcement Task Force last year. So I did plan a basic update. So if there are other changes to make, now's the perfect time if that becomes necessary. Also, you'll hear mentioned today Chapter 26, which is the business code, and Chapter 62, which is the sign code. Some of the topics that have been asked about are not in 56, so we're going to be skipping around a bit, but nothing's too difficult. So some of the topics, or excuse me, all the topics that I've been asked to chat about so far, solid waste cart storage, rain barrels, garage sales, trees and tree stumps. I'm going to also mention dead trees too, since I'm here, and shopping carts, which have become a challenge recently. Also, Mr. Roman, I believe, had a question about easement maintenance, and our city attorney has shared some information with all of you, I believe, and I have a single slide to chat about that too, and some news to share with you. So we'll get to all that as soon as we can. So to begin with, the solid waste cart storage issue is fairly simple. The Code Enforcement Task Force, when we had this discussion about the code, they seemed kind of indifferent to shopping carts, solid waste cart storage, as long as it wasn't right up against the road and in your face. Outside of that, the Code Enforcement Task Force was like, who cares? Side of your house, back of your house, who cares? And so that's what the law essentially says now is don't put your solid waste carts in front of your home, put them elsewhere. Well, depending on the shape of your house, the front of your home can change a little bit. And Mr. Merritt asked that I discuss this topic, and I'll explain where one of the trouble spots is. But this is the house we all picture in our heads. It's a rectangle, like a kindergartner would draw it. And it's very easy to see the front of the house, and we can see that trash carts are not allowed in front, but they're allowed along the sides and the rear. Well, that one's easy. Then you come across a uniquely shaped house, and again, we're looking at the front face. Anything between the front face and the road, off limits. Everywhere else, fine. One of the issues that draws the most complaints is an L-shaped house. And that is because, I'm going to back up 2 slides, for whatever reason, when you take a cart from the front of the property and move it 3 feet around a corner, nobody complains about it. But with an L-shaped house, you take that same cart and you move it 3 feet around the corner, it's still really visible. And that is what tends to bother folks. So the discussion started, well, where is the front face of this building? I personally think, and reading the law, the way it's written, the law says that you can't put your cart in between the front face and the road. The means one. There's one. Not any faces, not faces, parentheses, just the face. So I think the average person would look at a drawing like this and say, well, the face is the one right up against the road, which is why code enforcement is currently allowing carts in the elbow of the L, okay? However, the debate has come up, well, what if we consider other angles of the building faces too? And this, on the right here, you'd see this example, same house, but some folks are interpreting it this way, that this building has multiple faces. Each wall facing the road is its own face, which means the elbow of a house shaped like this is off limits too. So it pushes all the carts backwards, and you're away from the front of the house, no matter how you look at it. So these are the 2 scenarios we're dealing with. Do we want to consider a house to have more than one face? Depending on your answer, would determine what options folks have for placing carts. Now, in my presentation, which I skipped intentionally, I'm going to skip this intentionally because I found an easier way to explain this and have you all think about it. If the law stays the way it is, that would be the diagram on the left, okay? What you might consider, based on the discussion today, is essentially what we're being asked is, do you want to see a trash cart between the primary structure and the road? We don't have to define face. You don't have to get into any of that. Just ask yourself, should I see a trash cart between the street and the building, the primary structure? And then you don't have to define face. It doesn't mean anything anymore. So, and again, that covers every shape of house we just looked at. Do you want to see a trash cart between a building and the road that it's addressed to? Okay? So essentially, that's it for the trash cart question. Again, Mr. Merritt brought this up. I know that a number of folks in his district are raising this question. And I've hopefully explained why code enforcement interprets it as we do. But again, if a change is warranted, now's a good time to make it. So I think I got, yes, so that's it for the trash carts.
Okay. On this one, and I've spoken with Mr. Merritt, and I think he feels the newer definition is what he's looking for. I just want to clarify that under what you might be proposing, can you go back to 789 Sunshine Street?
Sure. That's my house.
That is your house. Would that also remove the cart on the lower left corner?
Yeah, because it's between, I'm sorry, yes, because it's between.
It's very symmetrical, and what's the bigger part of the primary structure? And so that's the one thing that definition maybe, I just want to make sure is clear enough that the cart kind of in that lower left notch is also not allowed.
I mean, if you think about it, it's just a little L, isn't it? Correct. Just like the other house shape. So if a code officer is parked on the street and sees a cart like that, is a building right behind it or a portion of the building right behind it? If the answer is yes, then it would be illegal under the proposal that Mr. Merritt is supporting.
Perfect.
So.
That's all I wanted to clarify and make sure. That is also something that I would support. Is there anyone that has a different opinion on that? Councilmember Roman?
Yeah, I had to kind of, the way I thought about this was, what is it that the ordinance is trying to prevent or do? And it seems like it's trying to prevent these trash cans from being seen from the street. So I think whether it's on the front, whether it's on the right or on the left, I think it can be seen. So, for me, I'd be in support of something that prohibits the front and anything on the left or the right of the home or in front of the L or whatever, as long as it can be seen from the street. I think I would be in support of prohibiting something like that.
Mm-hmm. You might consider with a proposal like that some folks have chain link fences so their backyards are completely open, which means they have nowhere to hide their cart from view. So some folks might struggle with that. Mm-hmm. There are ways around it, change your fence, put up shrubbery. There's definitely ways to deal with it. But that would be one of the pushbacks that code enforcement got immediately is, I can see your cart, but it's in the backyard, I know, but you have a chain link fence and I can see right through it. So that's one of the pushbacks you get with keeping carts invisible all over the property. So just FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll, you have anything?
Thank you for this presentation, Leo. The way I look at this, I'm happy with what I think you're proposing, or perhaps Councilmember Merritt's proposing, that as you showed in the L shape, that if it's between the front of the house and the street, I'm comfortable with that. And I'm not generally in favor of restricting them being on the side of the house for one reason that you outlined. I also know when we introduced the carts, there were many elderly people and a lot of widows and people with health problems and strength issues, et cetera, that were worried that they wouldn't be able to pull and move around a heavy cart. And of course, you can put less in it and it's not so heavy. It's been picked up, once or twice a week. That's a different thing. But I'm generally not in favor of trying to make life more difficult and have more big government, micromanaging people's homes. And I would also say that most residential properties have trees, hedges, flowers, et cetera, and, around their home. And so I think if someone is kind of objecting to a bin on the side of the house, they've got to be going pretty slowly and really looking for it if it's, around the side of the house. And I see bins in various places. And I'd also just say, being in property management, this is an issue that we have to deal with from time to time. And sometimes, for example, these are picked up in some municipality, not always here in Farmers Branch, on a Friday. The requirement is it's got to be put away Friday night or by 7 or 8 Saturday morning. Well, sometimes people leave Friday afternoon to go away for the weekend. There's an accident, there's an emergency, things happen. And so this is something I have to deal with tenants on an ongoing basis. And I think, again, our role in government should not be to penalize people, because life happens. And so I think if we keep it like this is and extend it to the L-shaped type of property, I think that is an improvement. Yeah.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm in a little bit of agreement that I don't want to, and we've had a couple of topics today that seem sort of homeowner association-like, and I don't want to go that far, and I don't want it to feel like we're going that far. However, I don't want to look down the street and see a whole bunch of trash cans everywhere. These particular trash receptacles, and I don't have one, but I think that they're gray, right?
They're green, trash is green and recycling is blue?
Blue.
Yeah.
Recycle's blue.
Mm-hmm.
So the trash is green. Is it like a dark green, light green?
I'm sorry?
It's gray.
Oh, it's gray. Okay, sorry. Mine are green at home. Sorry.
Okay. So they're gray, and that's a bit of a neutral color. It doesn't stick out like these lime green cans do on the screen, or like the blue cans do when you look down the alley. And we have an alley that we use for rear entry garages, and there's just a lot of big blue recycle cans out there. I do think that the ordinance needs to do its best to require that residents keep these receptacles hidden from street view. I understand that some people may have chain link fences and they're going to stick it just inside their chain link fence, and they might as well stick it in front of the chain link fence because you can still see it.
Right.
Screening presents its own set of concerns, issues, and challenges for certain residents. I get that. But however we word this, I think needs to do its best to hide the carts from street view.
Okay.
Councilmember Williams.
Good afternoon, Leo. Thanks for bringing this to our attention again. I was on that committee that helped to rewrite the ordinance, and I know we spent some time discussing the trash bins, and there were multiple reasons that we made it the way that we did. Whether it's hidden from the street, not hidden from the street, I think the purpose of this slide is to just bring some clarification on what is the front of your house. And I think that was the intention of the committee, that had multiple, each council member got to elect or got to appoint someone to that committee. And we all came to, I believe it was a unanimous decision on the trash can or the carts placement. And I think that that's in the spirit of what we were trying to do, which was we just don't want it in front of your house. And so I think having a little bit more clarification on what the front of the house is, I think that's a great idea. I think having it along the side, and if a neighbor wants to find a trash cart on the side, if he wants to peek around and really look to see if it's really visible from the street, they can. And it kind of weaponizes that our code enforcers to kind of tattle on our neighbors, because maybe you don't like blue, or maybe you don't like gray, or you didn't like the idea of the trash carts, or what have you. But the spirit of that committee's idea on the trash carts was, as long as they were tried to be pulled out of the front of the house, we were okay with that. And I think with council members' merits, concerns, and with what you've proposed, Leo, I think you've stuck with what the committee's goal was for that and made it better. So I appreciate it.
So it seems, definitely not in front. And I think modifying that definition to exclude some of these areas is something we can all agree with. I think, the two other things I've heard is hidden. And I would look for you two to maybe describe more of what that is, because is Councilmember Williams described, and she's correct, and each council member, when we went through this last time, appointed 2 members to this committee is kind of dual voice in that, to echo what everyone was looking. I think the consensus from that was, as long as it's not in the front, as long as it's not right in your face, that was the intent of the side. I mean, I can't have really trash carts in the townhome that I currently live in, or it's a choice between having a trash cart or keeping a second car out on the street. And a lot of people, they don't have the room in the garage. They might not be able to get to their backyard to bring it and wheel it all the way around to the front. And I think the side yard was a fair compromise of, as long as it's on the side and it's further back just due to setbacks and not in front of your garage, in front of your house, something that's very visible. I think that was the intent of what everyone was looking for. And so, I just want to make sure that, where you guys are on hidden, or we reopening the discussion of, if you got a chain link fence, I now need you to build a 6 to 8 foot tall wooden fence to screen this and do other measures, or does side of the yard, does that count as hidden enough for you all, as long as it's not very visible in the front of a house? And so, Councilmember Roman.
Yeah, I've driven through, whenever these things come up, I try to drive through other cities. I probably look like a creeper just driving around looking through people's houses, but I try to see what other cities are doing, and I try to get an idea of how does this compare to what's going on now, and what we're looking at. And so I drove through another city where I saw that people had put big plants to kind of cover it up. I saw people that have created like it's almost like a little, not a fence, but like a wooden piece that kind of sticks out from their house to cover the trash cans. They've done other things to try and keep the aesthetics of their home in the neighborhood looking clean, while also making sure that they can pull the trash can around. And I think trash cans are new to this city. I think that figuring out a way to cover them is also new to the city. We're talking about this ordinance about, is it the front, is it the side, is that considered the front? And also to add, I've talked to one of the people that was on that committee that you guys are discussing, and that person told me, if I would have known that my neighborhood would have looked like this, I would not have been in support of that, and I would have spoken up. So for those reasons is why I'm kind of bringing this up and saying, well, now that this is back in front of us again, let me be the conduit for one of the residents who was responsible for advocating for this, and bring this up and say, hey, it's really affecting how they feel in their neighborhood and the look and feel of their neighborhood. And one other resident that I talked to recently said that their neighborhood is quote unquote starting to look like Oak Cliff. And I don't think that's the image that any of us want to promote in our community. And so I just want to make sure that we do what we can to try and keep it hidden. I understand your point about the chain link fences and about seniors and other individuals who aren't able to bring them around, but maybe there's other solutions that they can implement. They just don't know. I mean, like I said, this is a brand new thing, and I don't think anybody, at least I'm not trying to say, let's use this to weaponize or anything like that. I think anything that we do here, including the discussion about trees, comes with some kind of penalty. If here's the rule that we're going to set forth, if you don't follow it, here are the implications that come with it. It's a way to try and encourage a positive behavior, and I think it would be a positive behavior to encourage people to keep keep their areas neat and clean and maintain the aesthetics of the neighborhood.
Okay. Councilmember Jackson?
So I'm not suggesting that we require residents to build screening or incur expense or rearrange foliage or bushes or such to hide them. I would do that because I have pride of ownership in my property and I don't like the looks of trash cans on the side of my house. I also have an alley, and it's a real pain for me to take my recycle cart to the alley because I don't have a gate in my fence. I have to come through my garage, over a ledge in the garage, go around the side of the garage, and I drag this thing over there. And that's after I remove one of the cars from my garage to get this monster out of there. So I do go to a lot of trouble to not just comply with, the requirements, but because I don't want a trash can sticking out in the alley like a sore thumb. Certainly don't want it in the front as well. One thing that I don't see as an example is a home that may have a driveway that goes down the side of their home to a garage that's in the back where you don't have an alley entrance. And some folks will store those trash receptacles on the side of their house in what's their driveway because they don't use the garage or the back part of their home to park their cars. To me, that's just as unsightly as sticking it 3 feet around the corner in the front of the house and you can see it from the street. So we've got to come up with something creative that can apply as much as possible without creating an abundance of responsibility, cost, or inconvenience for our residents.
Okay. Councilmember, do you have any more to add? And then Michael, I'll get to you. Go ahead, Councilmember Williams, and then I'm going to go to Michael.
I'm sorry. I don't have any more to add other than, again, we could just go round and round and round and round and round on this one issue, because homes are designed differently, and what one person finds aesthetically appealing. If I drive by a house and I can see their cart on the side of their home, it doesn't bother me. I don't think it takes any value away from the home. They're trash carts. Trash is part of our daily life. So, I think the way that it was proposed was good. I think the solutions that the committee came up with were sound, and I would like to see us move past trash carts.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll.
I think I kind of gave my views on this, and I would say this is not really a new ordinance or anything, and trash carts have been around for a couple of years. And even if we didn't have the recycling carts in Farmers Branch, 5 years ago or whatever, people were familiar with them in other communities. And I see many times people move here and they brought their trash cart or their recycling cart from the city they moved from. I've seen that several times. But I'm not in favor of penalizing residents. And I kind of gave my reasoning before. I'm comfortable moving this, that we would include, as I said, the L-shaped house. The three there with the X on it are on the front of the house, in my opinion, as a layman. And also, as Councilmember Williams stated, previous councils have discussed this, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's a different thing, but I was in a community the other day, and I was looking at a property. It had a pink front door. And I know a lot of HOAs, that would not be allowed. And, we see blue doors, green doors, et cetera, and people take pride in their homes. Everyone's different. And some people are artistic, some people are traditional, et cetera, and I don't think that's our role here to micromanage, everything about a person's home that they like or they love and they've invested in, et cetera. And it's also has been discussed at many times in previous councils, and currently, city is not an HOA. So I'm not for, making penalties and more hindrances or encumbrances or difficulties for people moving the bins around. And as I stated before, life happens, you know. And I've talked to people sometimes said, you know, you left your bin out, you know, over the weekend or whatever. I said, well, we went away. I said, well, maybe you could talk to your neighbor and you can kind of help each other out. So, yeah, that's just my views on it.
Okay. It sounds like at a minimum, the changes that have been recommended, and I think we'll have another opportunity to discuss this when it comes back. So
Okay.
let's start there at a minimum.
Gotcha.
Maybe it ramps up. Maybe that's all it is. So
Okay.
cool. Rain barrels.
Rain barrels, rain barrels are not in the law. This is fairly simple. The outside storage regulations in Chapter 56 say that you cannot store things outside, period. And then the next sentence says, you can store things outside if they're on this list. And there's 20 things on that list, you know, decorative things and trash carts, as long as they follow the law, can be stored outside and things like that. Well, the discussion came up while Mr. Cox was still here about rain barrels. We have a department dedicated to sustainability and things like that. And so wouldn't rain barrels be one of those sensible things that you would expect to see outside? So he actually asked me to bring this forward, I believe after speaking to one of you, and I threw it on the list today. The issue is, again, it is not in the law at all, so we would be starting from scratch. I don't think it's that hard, but we would have to define what a rain barrel is. How many can people have? You know, I've seen homes with literally dozens of barrels. And so limitations and placement and things like that would have to be worked out. But I don't think it's too difficult if everyone can get in the same sphere. The issue that I ran into while I was researching this is it's interesting. When the law doesn't define a term, we tend to just look at the dictionary if it's not a common enough word that everyone can agree on. And so the definition in the dictionary of a rain barrel, I put in that box there. It says a rain barrel is a barrel placed so as to catch water. Every one of those in those photos, and this one, meets the definition of a rain barrel. But I have a feeling that we would all agree that we probably don't want to see number 3. So that's why definitions are so important. But there are other things to consider here if you look at the difference between all of these. This one is connected directly to a gutter. The other ones, some of them empty into a barrel that are not connected to the barrel. So there are covers, some have covers, some do not. You'll see other ones, you know, some are not even near the gutters. They're in the middle of the yard, just collecting rainwater freely. So those kinds of regulations would have to be worked out if you want to exempt rain barrels from the outside storage prohibition. So there's a lot for you folks to work out here. I don't know, it may be more helpful if I draft language that would get you started, and then when we come back together, you can critique that. Or if you want to go at it today and maybe you get lucky and you'll agree at one pass. You never know. But there are a lot of variables, and there's 5 or 6 people to try and get to agree here, so it might be rough. But I don't know. I've heard fans, number 2, some people like number 2 because they're cheap. Other folks hate number 2 because they look industrial. So this one can go in a lot of different directions. So I'll help however I can.
Okay. High level, I'm in support of rain barrels, but I also think that this is probably a discussion that to get to what we might want this to look like or everything else, maybe, and if council's supportive, pass this through the sustainability department, kind of let them weigh in a little further on some of those decisions that you're talking about to bring back a full presentation, but that's only if the rest of council's supportive. I know I'm just one person, so if y'all aren't, it's not gonna hurt my feelings. I just, I think it's a wonderful option for people to explore in their home, especially as they address their own irrigation, sustainability, things of that nature. But I think that, we should let our resident experts who are on the committee maybe take a deeper dive into this and come back to us with some recommendations. I know you I'm going to work my way around, but Councilmember.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I actually attended the most recent Sustainability Committee meeting, and I know that was something that they were discussing already. I just want to make sure that they keep in mind, what it is that we're looking for them. Maybe we can give them some kind of guidelines and say, hey, these are the things that we want you to determine, and come back to us with recommendations on.
Do you have any examples of those right now?
So size, one of the things that I'm particularly concerned about is making sure that while we will allow people to do it, hopefully it doesn't attract mosquitoes. So something that's covered, doesn't have any entrances, it's going to be a breeding ground for mosquitoes, and that maintains the appeal of the neighborhood as well. Unlike probably 2 or 3, and maybe the last one also. I like the first one. So some of those things.
Okay. Councilmember Driscoll.
Yes. Again, thanks for the presentation. I kind of like your idea of maybe you coming up with a general format or, some options. And I also like the idea of, tasking the Sustainability Committee with this. In general, I'm in favor of rain barrels. I think pretty obvious reasons. We're about 60 days into a massive drought, and most of the state of Texas is in one stage or another of a drought. And with climate change, rain barrels are used all over the world, and lots of folks use them that have pretty extensive gardens, flower gardens, or raising tomatoes or whatever, and they use the rainwater collected, and then they don't have to consume water. So this ties in with our goals on sustainability, and I'm generally in favor of us moving forward with this.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. So a rain barrel, obvious that these are rain barrels in the pictures. What if I have a blue barrel in my backyard with the lid on it or lid off of it? It's not catching water from a downspout, probably catches water from rain, either sitting in the lid or in the barrel. Is that barrel okay under today's ordinance or code?
As the ordinance is today, no. Anything that collects water is trash because of the safety issue. So if there's a barrel or a bucket standing alone in somebody's yard, that's not okay because it collects water.
So 3 or 4 or 5 big blue barrels in my backyard that are not serving any rain collection purpose for my garden is currently a code violation?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Because rain barrels don't exist currently, so they're not exempt from the law. So.
Okay. So I bring that up because I want to make sure that what we're addressing here are people who are actively using barrels to capture rain for whatever purpose, but not barrels that are just sitting in backyards. And if they're in a backyard and you can't see them from the street, then how do we administer our code in those situations?
We couldn't currently because it would be invisible.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Williams.
I agree with you, Mayor. I think having sustainability, do some research and come back with some recommendations for us. I know that Leo is very, very helpful with doing his due diligence before coming to a board or a committee like that. So he'd be able to make some recommendations and help guide that based on his experience, which is extensive in code enforcement, much more so than what any of us on this diocese. And so that's why I would like to see before we just open full discussion as council members.
Good. Thanks.
So I can get with the Sustainability Committee and try to draft something for you based on those discussions?
Luckily, there are chairs here.
Yes, I said, we've met before.
Yeah. But also to Councilmember Roman's point, and I'm sure they're looking into it if they're already discussing it, size placement standards.
Yes, right, we'll get into all that.
Definitions, is it connected to irrigation or not for backfill and other things? And so we want the best practices that make it as safe as possible, so.
Okay.
Cool. And do we have time for garage sales? Probably not. All right, I'm going to gonna have to come back
Okay.
to finish these, but since Mr. Heath is here, and I know Councilmember Merritt will be calling in, we're gonna go ahead and recess, go into executive session, and then come back out. So B1, council may convene into a closed executive session pursuant to section 551.072 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the purchase, exchange, lease, or sale of real property north of Farmers Branch Lane, south of Valley View, east of I-35, west of Josie. Council may convene into a closed executive session pursuant to section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code. Consultation with the city attorney to discuss the 2022 redistricting boundaries for districts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We will recess. The time is 4:50 p.m.